welcome to another episode of I Helped Make That. Today we have Jury Love, a producer, author, journalist, actress, and stand-in, amongst other things, on our show. Welcome to the show, Jury.
Thank you, Liam, for having me.
You're welcome. Now, believe it or not, Jury is also a part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, as she was a stand in and photo double for Michelle Yeoh in Shang-Chi from last year. Isn't that right, Jury?
Yes, absolutely. I was so honored to do that.
I'm glad to hear that. And we will be talking about it today. But before we do, let us get the anchor ad out of the way. So, Jury, have you ever wanted to create a podcast?
Yes.
In fact, actually, wait a minute. Don't you have a podcast?
Yes, I do.
Tell us a bit more about your podcast.
Yes. So I started one podcast, which I'm not doing it, but it was called Now or Never, and it's still available, where people talk about now or never moment. But now I started a podcast called A Gift from Adversity, and which is based on my book, A Gift from Adversity, that's published in 2020. And this is a book about my life, which subtitle is Overcoming Sexual Abuse, Domestic Violence, Bullying, and Homelessness. And I started a podcast on Anchor platform and goes to Spotify, also using StreamYard, going on Facebook, and then YouTube Live. I wanted to create it because there's not so much platform that talks about adversity and challenges, but I didn't want my podcast to be just like complaining or venting platform, but rather sharing what had happened, but tools that they used to overcome and a gift that came from it.
Wow, that sounds really great. Now, tell me, Jury, what do you use to record the podcast?
Yeah, StreamYard.
Okay. Now, I was using StreamYard, but I got to be honest, I was having some troubles with it. So I personally went to Zoom, but if you want to create a podcast yourself, you can use StreamYard, you can use Zoom, or if you want, you can also use Anchor. You know why Anchor, Jury?
Why?
Because Anchor is the easiest podcasting platform to use. You just sign up for an account, type in all your show information, and then you're there. You can just record the podcast, then put it on all the platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all of them. So, if you want to create a podcast, you can try StreamYard, you can try Zoom, or you can try Anchor today. Great. Now, Jury, tell me, how did you get the opportunity to be Michelle Yeoh's stand-in slash photo double in the first place?
Sure. So I was doing Dexter, and I was in on the set for like 12 hours, very long day since in the morning. And I came home Monday and exhausted, and I just sat down and I looked at my Facebook notification where my friend Derek tagged me for this photo double Michelle Yao casting. And I had no idea what it was. There was no information rather than Michelle Yao's photo and then send the size. I had no idea what it was. And I just thought maybe my headshot can pass. So I didn't think much. And I just sent the information to the email address on the tag that I got from on the Facebook, my friend Derek. I'm so grateful. So I send it, and I send, trust me, I send auditions and casting calls every single day between me and my two children. I do this every day like autopilot. So I didn't think anything of it. And then I send my headshot and then my size, like height, weight, bra size, whatever. And then next day I was on the set on Dexter, and I got a call from a California number. So I took it, and then it was a casting director that I emailed, and then two things that she said: Paramount Studio wants you for Avenger reshoot. Can you come to COVID test tonight? So I'm like, where? And then she said Hollywood, and I'm like, I'm in Massachusetts. And then she was very serious, and then she's like, when can you get here? So I was like, tomorrow. And then I hung up, and then she needed a COVID test approved by Dexter Production. So I was able to give her my account, and she was able to send it to the Paramount Studio. And then basically, I called my friend who is really good at booking flights. So I asked her to see if she can find a flight for me. So she did. I gave her my credit number, and then she booked the flight the next day, 5:30 in the morning to LA. So I came home around 8, 9 p.m., packed everything for 5 days. And then my friend came to pick me up around like 3 a.m. And then I dropped my kids off at my friend's house. And then I got on the airplane. And then um, I got a layover in Chicago, and I got to LA at 11:30 a.m. And my friend David came to pick me up. And then I went to the COVID test. And then on a COVID test, I still had no idea why I was there for. And then I asked the COVID test person, and it was saying like steamboat, and that was a code. All the major movie, by the way, have this code name so that people don't spill the information. So it was a steamboat, and I'm like, what is steamboat? And then he's like, it's actually called Shang-Chi. And I looked it up. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm in Marvel Studios movie. So I went to a fitting after the COVID test, and I wore two costumes that Michelle Yeoh actually is wearing in the Shang-Chi movie. When she appears, it's like a green, gorgeous dress with a necklace. And then the last fighting scene, which is a red costume, which is very complicated and was so impressive. It took me like maybe 10, 15 minutes to wear the whole costume, or maybe more. So the shoes had two layers, like black inside, and then red, and then black kind of spider-ish design outside. And then the pants was like really tight to the knee, and it flare after the knee. And they had so much layer of belts, and then ribbons to tie. And also they had this sleeve that you kind of put your um, hand in, arms in, and it had woven bamboos and jewelries. And then there was colored, like red and black colored um, bamboo necklace to go with, like a choker. It was so cool. And I saw Michelle Yeoh's Polaroid photos of her like lying down, and then they were trying to match me, and it was just so cool. And so that was my first day. And then I went to the Paramount Studio next day, and they gave me the map. I had the best lunch ever, like lobster tail, filet mignon, and then angel hair pasta, creme brulee with the flour on it. And then I got to see Samu and Menger. Michelle wasn't there because that's the day that she gets off, and then photo double, and then Stanley comes. So I got to see the action, and then the big Marvel Studio, I mean Paramount Studio, and then the director chair says Marvel Studios, and then it came out on my birthday, September 3rd. So I went to see it in the theater in Massachusetts. I felt very, 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 very special.
Before you were in this movie, were you and your son big fans of Marvel's previous movies?
I'm not sure about my son, but I definitely am, like, especially Spider-Man is like my favorite. And I like the Marvel Studios all movies but especially Spider-Man, I don't know what it is, but the latest one that they had three Spider-Man was the coolest, and I really liked how audience in the movie theater cheered like when the three Spider-Man came. Was so cool.
Yeah, Spider-Man's probably one of my favorites too. So you said that you were on set, looking at all the action and everything. How was it actually working with a special effects heavy movie? Because all of Michelle's scenes were in the fantastical land. I think it was called Tao Lo. So, how was it filming in an environment like that?
I don't know if I can say everything about it, but I think since it's already out, it's safe to say that my scene that I was hired for, it was a reshoot. So they already filmed everything, and I think they had something that they wanted to reshoot. So it wasn't like heavy action, but it was more like a talking scene.
Okay, thank you for the correction. So, was that on like a big set or was it okay? And where was that set filmed?
It was in Paramount Studio in Hollywood.
Okay, but like, I mean, how was it like filmed?
So to explain, Paramount Studio, they have different entrances, but it's like a huge city. And then when you enter, they give you a map, and then you get lost. You just like, it's a city. It has so many buildings, and then golf cart, like you get lost like so easily. And then they have like outside like a huge green screen, and then carpentries, and then each warehouse or each studio is gigantic. So they were shooting in one of the studio, and I was in the trailer for a while, and I was in one of the studio that was so huge and empty, and I was waiting, and then yeah, basically it's like a green screen, but it was blue, and it has a lot of like dots. I mean, like the tape all over, like markings. And then there's maybe 50, 60 people, but it was like during the pandemic, so everyone's like wearing face shields and mask, and then I don't know who it was. It was like so many people, but I was basically, when I stood in, um I had this box, and I had a camera, and then just yeah, um just regular standing job.
All right. And do you remember exactly which scene you stood in for?
Yeah, it was like a rice field, like where um Michelle's like talking to Sim and Menger when they came to visit, like towards the end of the movie, where they reunite and then kind of discuss about the late mom of Simu, the Shang-Chi.
So, were you interacting with the actors when you were filming?
Um, More so with the AD and director,
Okay.
not the actor. But afterwards, actually, after we wrapped, Menger came and then gave me Japanese snack. She was very
Nice.
sweet, and then Simu said hi, and then they're very very friendly. They're superstars, obviously, but Menger had this bucket full of Japanese snacks, and then she offered me some.
Oh, that's really sweet. So, when you were filming, it was basically just you on the set with the ADs and everyone?
So there were another stand-in guy too, and there were maybe six of us. So there's another photo double. So, but it wasn't like the scene where you have fight scene where it's like hundreds of people, because it was a reshoot. Um, I was there only one day for the production, so it was just maybe like 50 crew in the one studio, and then everyone's trying to set the light, camera. It's very chaotic, just trying to like set, and then there's like maybe 4 or 5 different monitors.
And how long did it take to film?
I was there from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. We usually like movie set is like 12 to 14 hours a day. But I don't know exactly how many days they had. But I was only there for one day for the reshoot scene. But then I've been on different productions, and I know like when you have like a paycheck or a voucher, you see like a day 7 or day 50 or day 40. So I know some of the productions that I've been on last year, this year, they wrap at like 72 days or 51 days, and then usually between, I would say, like 2 3 months productions. I don't know how long the Shang-Chi took, but I was only there after the fact that they already wrapped the whole movie, but they had a few scenes they need to reshoot.
So you said you flew in for this shoot, right?
Yes.
So did you stay after the shoot was over, or did you go back home?
Yeah, so my friend took a flight for me, arranged a flight for me for Wednesday to Sunday, on Monday morning, actually Sunday night. So I was able to stay a little bit with my friends, and it was really nice to reunite with my friends from Berkeley College of Music, where I went. And then a lot of my friends either moved to New York or LA, so I was able to meet up with them. And then I um, really want to thank my friend Jordan and Tony for letting me stay at their place. It was so nice.
That's nice. So you went to the Berkeley College of Music. Could you
Yes.
could you tell us a bit about how you got there?
Yes. So my book, A Gift from Adversity, this one talks a lot about like how I got there, but I was basically homeless when I was 18. And
Mm-hmm.
then I was working very hard, and then I got food poison, and I just reevaluated my life. What if I wanted to, like, do something, like, and if I died today? And then I realized that I really want to do music, and I thought about going to Berkeley College of Music. And then I researched and then found out that they have a scholarship tour in Tokyo. So I wore a kimono, I practiced my audition song, and I went there and I played, and I got a partial scholarship to come to Berkeley College of Music. And that was 1998, so a long time ago.
Well, that's a very inspiring story.
Yeah.
So now you're welcome. So now I'm curious, after you did Shang-Chi, spent a few days, just reuniting with everyone, and then went back home, did you go back to doing Dexter?
I don't remember exactly. I've done like 12 different productions, so I don't remember. Like, every day is different for me. Like, I'm in so many different productions, including My Children. So I don't exactly remember if I went back to Dexter or some other movies.
I've noticed something interesting about sort of these sci-fi fantasy movies in general. Lately, it seems like intergenerational conflict has been sort of a big theme in these movies, not just Shang-Chi, but there's also been Everything Everywhere All at Once and Kanto, Turning Red. Why do you think that is?
Oh, that's a great question. I went to screening for Everything Everywhere All at Once, and then two Daniels were at the Q&A, and it was so amazing. And I told them that I was a photo double for Michelle Yao. I felt very honored and connected, so for somehow. But that movie, like, specifically, was definitely intergeneration conflict between the mother and then the daughter, who is a lesbian and Asian. And it's just like, um I don't know why, but I think it's more that audience can relate. Even if you don't have this international conflict or gender conflict, even if you are straight, and then if you have, like, no cultural conflicts, I think parenting itself is hard in any situations. So I think to add to that, maybe gender conflict or cultural conflict, those are the things that people can completely relate to. Obviously, like romance, falling in love, breaking up. Um, so like basically like emotional connection is, as a filmmaker, I produce film as well, as where people can gravitate towards, because you know when you see like Tom Cruise, like he's like untouchable, and you know when you see Maverick, like the Top Gun, there are portions where he has this girlfriend, and then the girlfriend's daughter has some interaction with Tom, and those are the part that you can kind of relate. And then I think strategically, as a filmmaker or storyteller, like how can you captivate the audience, and then that I think is a huge portion of it, that it's very intentional and strategic. But at the same time, this adding to it, um as LGBTQ issues, or like a cultural conflict and expectations, um like Asian culture, like I'm from Japan, that we have certain expectations, and being in America obviously can add more pressure to those conflicts. So I think that's very interesting point of view, and that's, I think that is a reason why really to captivate the audience.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And that also makes it different from, the same old narrative that Hollywood had been using for decades. I mean, there's always been sort of like expectations of father conflicts, expectation of mother conflicts in movies, but it's been more sort of a cultural thing, as as seen in Shang-Chi and the other movies, I mentioned above, which honestly sort of makes it a bit more personal than like Tom Cruise has daddy issues or whatever. So so then going off of that, I think also though that might be why people relate more to the MCU than other superhero movies, because there is more of, even though they're like very mass marketed, big budget blockbusters, every character in the MCU still has sort of those personal issues, personal conflicts. Spider-Man is a perfect example. Even Iron Man, and he's like this big billionaire, but like, other superheroes from other studios, I won't name names, or, other action movies, they I try to attempt it, but it doesn't always come clear, maybe. And that's why people can't really relate to them on an emotional level, no matter how well they do at the box office. Would you agree with that?
I think so, and especially like the stars are like so huge, like A-list stars, that I just feel they're like so untouchable and then unrealistic. Like they're like super pretty, handsome, like perfectly made, and then how can they even struggle? And then I think that comes to the personal story part, and I think as a filmmaker, so those moments that you capture, like say, like I loved West Side Story, and I loved how Steven Spielberg captured this like love connection moment where like the two main character meet their eyes for the first time at the dance scene where people are dancing crazy, but then they kind of lock their eyes far distance and move together to um, the end of the hall, I mean the ballroom, and shadows, and it's just so beautifully captured. And I feel those are the moments that, as a filmmaker or like maybe short list, I think it's very, very strategic. And I think if you have like a few moments in the movie, you are gold, where people's like heart just like stops, or like just cry, and then just like, oh my gosh, what had happened to me? Like Falls in Our Stars, for instance, like I needed a towel. Like the whole movie I was crying. And I feel like even like superhero movies, there are some moments that like you have, wow, like I feel very connected, and I think that's so important. And screenwriters know, like they know exactly what they're doing. And then the film production, they know exactly how to light it, how to capture it, and then how to have the close up, and then music. Everything has to come together for those kind of moments.
Yeah, and I think that Shang-Chi is at its strongest when it does focus on the emotional conflicts, when it does focus on the emotional center. I think it's a pretty good movie. I'll admit sometimes when it tries to have service, like, some of the Marvel cameos, those are the weaker moments of the movie to me, because that's when it starts to feel a bit phony. That's when it starts to feel a little superficial. But I think it's saved by the emotional center at these part of the movie between Shang-Chi and his family.
Yeah, absolutely. I really love the conflict that they had between the sister and the brother, and then how they fought this dragon at the end together, and then how they say, I will never leave you. You can let me go. The last fighting scene, and then Shang-Chi would say, I'll never. And that's the moment, like, oh, I thought it was really cool. And, I think leading up to that, I really love the conflict that, well, it's sad, but at the same time, there's a girl and a boy issues that, in Japan also, that if you have a first son and then the girl as a younger sister, like they treat the boys completely different than the girl. And as a first son, they have more responsibility. And that's like, that goes to some cultures in Africa or Middle Eastern countries, that girls are not like treated as equally as boys, and especially the firstborn. And that Shang-Chi kind of represent that, um, part of it, because Menger, who played the Shang-Chi's sister, she wasn't as equally treated as a fighter or assistants. And then she wasn't getting trained as Shang-Chi when he was young, but she became such a great fighter at the end, and she was learning, hiding and learning. And those are really well portrait of our Asian culture.
And would you say that maybe having an Asian director like Dustin helped make it feel more authentic?
I definitely think so, because um, there's not so many Asian directors to start with. And interestingly, when I went to Q&A for Everything Everywhere All at Once, Daniel, the Asian, who tied up with the white Daniel, said to the audience that as an Asian director or writer, um, he felt more power when he partnered with the Caucasian director writer together, because of the white privilege um, that they can exercise. And I just feel like sometimes like the black movies or Asian movies are very like rare. Like Black Panther is like rare, like crazy Asian, crazy rich Asian. That's rare. Like it's all Asian cast. Shang-Chi is all Asian cast almost. And I think that tells you right there that it's not well portrait, like it's getting there, but it's very rare. And I think Dustin definitely understands. And then I heard some interviews, like, Shang-Chi is one of the Marvel's oldest comic, like 1978, and it's never been in a film. And Dustin said, look, I really want to do Asian cast, and then the Asian movies and stuff. So I feel it took him a really long time to get there, for the Marvel Studios to say yes. And I think it's a win, and I think it's a historical win that we have this movie with all Asian superstars.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think, like, I'm not saying you can't make a movie outside your own worldview or culture, but it's definitely harder to, because as we said, it can feel superficial and fake. Like, have you ever seen Dustin's first movie, Short Term 12?
No.
Oh, well, it was a it was a movie starring Brie Larson. Basically, it was about a woman who is sort of a therapist for people in this group home for the abused. They're like teenagers. And basically, she has a new client coming in, and she has to help her escape her abusive father. And I think I've heard that Dustin, actually, before he was a director, did work in homes like that. So it felt like a very personal, real story to him. So I would check it out. It's a very good movie. But I will admit I was a little bit disappointed in his first follow up, which is The Glass Castle, because it did feel like, even though he's had experience with the abused, like, it didn't feel like his story. Like, it felt like he was just there to tell someone else's story, because it was based on a true story. Well, it was based on a book that was based on a true story, but it was kind of a movie that, to me, felt like he didn't, and I could be wrong because I don't know Dustin. I wasn't there on set with him, but it did kind of feel like he was hired just to tell someone's story, and that the real director was the woman who had wrote the book. And I was wondering if he at least put a bit more of his perspective on it, if the movie would have been a bit different. Though, and I do feel like his other movie after that, Just Mercy, I think it's called, with Michael B. Jordan. Have you seen that one? Oh,
No.
all right. Well, that's another movie. I think it was also based on a true story, but I think it felt less controlled by the people the story was based on, and it was a stronger film overall for it. But and I think the personal touch uh continued here in Shang-Chi. I mean, yeah, it's a Marvel movie, so of course there's, a lot of executives and producers, you know, putting in, notes, and, telling him what he can and cannot put in the movie. There's definitely a committee behind it, but enough of the personal voice still comes out at the end.
Yeah, definitely. And then the Japanese film Drive My Car won the Oscar, the best
Yes.
international feature film this year. And I was very proud because, I'm Japanese, and then the Oscars obviously hard to win. And also Coda, who didn't have
Oh,
the A-list stars, and it won. It's a family conflict as well that you mentioned earlier. And then my friend Kayla was in it, and then a lot of local um, actors that I know worked on Coda, and I feel like more authentic the stories are. Like, even if you don't have the A-list stars, that it can really captivate. Because I was interviewing Kayla actually, and then she said after they didn't have way too much high budget, but after they filmed, then they won the Sundance, and then Apple bought it for $25 million, the highest money that they put to buy, and then they won all the SAG award and all the Oscars, like hat trick, and it's just so unbelievable. And I love the coda. I
loved
cried.
it too.
Yeah, I cried so much. And then I think when it comes to a family conflict, that really shows the deaf family that has one child that is not deaf, and then trying to go to Berklee College of Music where I went. And it really shows how not just the again like a gay issues or anything, that really focused on the disabilities and abilities and passions and dreams, and how can parents who are deaf sabotage the dream of being a musician. And but the girl try so hard to get in. And then I love the scene where the father touched the throat when she was trying to sing and then trying to understand. And I love the scene where broke me to tears, was when she was performing at the high school scene where they cut all the sound completely. And I had a meeting with the camera operator for Coda, through Women in Film Video New England network event. And then he said he had no idea the post production that they're gonna cut the audio. And then it was like a minute, like long time that they cut the audio, and then to let the audience experience how it feels like to be deaf. And I just started to cry so much because I never experienced that. And it was just so effective, and it was just so beautifully shot. And I feel all the filmmakers deserve so much credit in filmmaking, and then storytelling, and being authentic, even low budget, high budget. I made the film called Sweet Wind, written by Paul Kandarian. I was a producer and I was a composer. And then we won the Jersey Shore Film Festival, the best family drama. It's available on Reveal, REVEEL. So if you put Sweet Wind, you can watch the movie. And every time I watch, I cry when Paul Kandarian and Brian McDonald, who plays father and son, and Paul puts his hand on his son. Every time I see that scene, it just gets me. And again, the movie is like, you never know which point of the movie that people can relate and then can grab the hearts of audience. Everybody feels different way, but I feel like even if it's not too strategic about like making people cry or attached to or have this like wow moment, like I feel the whole point of filmmaking is having those emotional roller coaster. And then how can we entertain, not just going somewhere, but being right here present, and then being immersed in the character's view and the world. And that's really our job.
And I agree. And that's a perfect place to end it. Anyway, before we go, Jury, do you have anything you'd like to plug?
Well, Liam, thank you so much for having me on my show, and thank you for all of your help in terms of me getting out there, and then your support for booking guests for my podcast as well. And you have been such a great support. And then I hope the audience will enjoy our episode, and I just really appreciate our friendship.
Thank you. Me too. Anyway, that's all the time we have. That was I Help Make That. I'm Liam Higgins. And have a great day, everyone.